Now that I've done the recap for Season 1 and 2, all that's left now is Season 3. So as usual, I'll be summarizing the events that happened in Season 3 and at the end of the video, give my brief review of the season as well. Now before I start, the first half of the season mostly covers the side story depicted in Volume 8 of the light novel, so it's less of a continuation of the story from Season 2, but still provides some nice world building for the series. It starts with ainz congratulating all the NPCs for their hard work in the Riestus Kingdom and granting rewards to Antoma, Sebas and Solution. After that, we are shown some new locations within Nazarick like the bathhouse where ainz is currently taking a slime bath and the maid cafeteria where the homunculus maids have their meals. It's also revealed that ainz has ordered Albedo to take some time off along with Aura and Sheltier. Albedo shows them her war Bicon, but Sheltier soon discovers that Albedo is unable to ride the Bicon because she's still a pure maiden, much to their surprise. Inside ainz's office, he invites Demirouche and the other male floor guardians to the Nazarick spa via a secret document. Later, he meets with Maret and thanks Maret for the kind words while giving gratitude to the NPCs of Nazarick. Albedo, after hearing his words, went into a lustful hit and forcefully tried to do it with ainz. After that ordeal, we see ainz and the male floor guardians were enjoying themselves, but Albedo was behaving poorly, so the lion golem created by Lucifer, one of the supreme beings, comes alive and started to attack them. Moving on, ainz gathered all the NPCs in the throne room to allow Demirouche and Albedo to explain the future plans of Nazarick. Ainz is surprised when he finally learns about their plan for world domination, so he asks Demirouche how they will proceed. Demirouche then suggested for them to reveal the existence of Nazarick and form their own nation using what they learned from Kane Village. Speaking of Kane Village, we see they have managed to prosper with the help of the goblin troops and Henry's leadership. Later, Henry and Nephria went into the forest to gather herbs with Gokko, Kaijali and Unlai. They will encounter a goblin child named Agu who is being attacked by Barghest and they managed to save him. Nephria then used the new potion he created to test on Agu and afterwards they brought him back to the village. Back in the village, Agu tells them about the Giant of the East and the Demon Snake of the West, and they conclude that the village might be targeted. Lupus Regina suggested to request help from ainz, but Henry declines, wanting to rely on themselves. After the meeting, Nephria gave one of the purple potions to Lupus Regina so that she can deliver the potion to ainz. At night, Jugen reports to Henry that he managed to rescue Agu's tribe and captured 5 ogres who pledged their allegiance to her. The next day, Henry travels to Irantau, but she is stopped by the local guards. However, the adventurer Momon arrives to vouch for her, so she was released and later she was questioned by Nabe on her visit. At the Adventurers Guild, Henry explains the situation to the receptionist and later the receptionist was desperate to find out details about the request as we see Hamusuke's shadow, so it's likely that Momon was involved. After she completed her task, she left to regroup with the goblins outside and she even gifted them new weapons she bought from the Adventurers Guild. When they returned to the village, Henry was asked to become the next chief and after having a discussion with Lupus Regina and Nephria, she decides to take on the role. Afterwards, we see Lupus Regina has been called back to Nazarick and she was reprimanded by ainz for failing to inform him about the Giant of the East and the Demon Snake of the West. Ainz proceeds to explain the importance of the village and how Nephria is helping to develop stronger potions native to the new world. As he was explaining, Lupus Regina was reminded of the purple potion that she was supposed to deliver to ainz. After hearing the explanation, Lupus Regina left to fulfill her duties while ainz decides to visit the Giant and the Demon Snake with Aura as he wanted to test Lupus Regina later on. When they arrived at the den of the ogres, he met Gu, the Giant of the East, and Rirarius, the Demon Snake of the West. Ainz orders Aura to capture the snake while he fought against Gu and realizing how weak the ogre was, he simply killed Gu along with the other ogres using Aura of Despair. He then asked Rirarius to gather his minions and submit to Nazarick. Back in Kane Village, we see they are being attacked by the Giant of the East and the Demon Snake of the West. The goblin troops and some of the villagers prepare for battle and they manage to hold off the first wave, but the zombified Gu soon join the fight. Meanwhile, Henry and Nephria were checking the village to ensure everyone escaped, but one ogre managed to get in. The ogre chases after them and Nephria decides to distract it while Henry went to look for help. As he was about to be killed by the ogre, Lupus Regina arrives to save him and before she left, she informed Nephria that he was invited to Nazarick. Meanwhile, Jugem and his forces managed to defeat Gu and the battle ended. Later, Nephria, Henry and Nemu were brought to Nazarick by Lupus Regina and Yuri Alpha. When they arrived, Nemu's excitement and reaction made ainz very happy so he took her on a tour. After ainz returned with Nemu, he prepared an extravagant meal for them to enjoy. In the Baruf Empire, we see Fluder Paradine is trying to take control of a Death Knight but failed, and he's also doing experiments on creating zombies. We then see Momon and Abe visiting Avinta, the capital of the Baruf Empire. They also went to find Fluder and he swears his allegiance to ainz after seeing his true power. Meanwhile, in the Imperial Palace, Emperor Jignev is listening to reports about the Yadabov incident, and he orders Fluder to investigate the demon, the adventurer Momon, and the magic caster ainz. Then we are introduced to the 4 Imperial Knights of the Empire. Somewhere in the city, the worker group known as Team FORESIGHT is discussing about their next job and decides to accept the request to explore a newly discovered tomb within the reactor's territory. The worker groups from Team FORESIGHT, Dragon Hunt, Heavy Masher, and Temu gather for the mission. Before they left for the mission, Momon questions them about their intentions for taking up the mission, and when they answered money, their fates were sealed. With that, the worker groups arrived at the outskirts of Nazarick and they all entered at their respective entry points. We see Heavy Masher encountering a small burial room filled with treasures, and we later learn that the other teams found the same things as well. At the central mausoleum, Dragon Hunt left the exploration of the lower floors to the other worker groups while they looked for other entrances. Back at camp, Ainz swapped places with Pandora Sector and returned to Nazarick where he is greeted by Albedo. Ainz proceeds to sit on the throne to enjoy the show that Albedo has prepared for their guests. The first was Dragon Hunt as they encountered the Pleiades outside and fought the Ogaders summoned by Yuri Alpha. However, members of Dragon Hunt were much weaker than expected and they all died except for the leader Papatra. As for the Heavy Masher, they were being chased by elder leeches and after escaping to a room, they were transported away. Gringam and the thief were transported to Kyohuko's room and they were devoured by his family, while another was transported to Neuralist Pinkyu, and I'm sure everyone can guess what is going to happen to him. Now going over to Temu, they'll encounter Hamusuke and he fought against Iria. Hamusuke easily cut off both his arms and killed Iria with his tail. The last one we see to face their deaths would be Team FORESIGHT, and they were teleported to the amphitheater where Ainz and Albedo came out to greet them. Hekeran greets Ainz and tries to deceive him, but that only angered him. Ainz proceeds to attack Team FORESIGHT with a sword and shield, but then he decides to fight as a magic caster instead. When he removes his ring, Ash vomits from the shock of seeing his true magical potential. Ainz attacks again and he took down Hekeran with paralysis. Robodick then tells Ash to escape while he and Imina stay behind to fight Ainz. Ainz promises to let Ash go, but asks Xiaotia to first show her true fear and then give her a merciful death. After Ainz defeated the both of them, Hekeran and Imina were taken away to the large hole while Robodick will be used for experimentation. As for Ash, she realizes there is no hope of escape, so she decides to fight Xiaotia but was easily overpowered and killed. Back in the throne room, Ainz commends Albedo for her hard work and Antoma arrives to give a report. Antoma has also taken the voice of Ash for herself. In the Empire, Jignif is hearing the report about the worker groups but is soon interrupted by the arrival of Mare and Aura who came to deliver a message. Mare proceeded to kill all the humans present in the courtyard and Jignif, realizing his error, decides to personally go to Nazarick to apologize. On their way to Nazarick, Jignif is having a brief discussion with the other members of the delegation. When they arrive, they are greeted by Yuri and Lupus Regina. They were shocked by their ability to manipulate the weather and that they are in control of numerous Death Knights. Then the delegation sat down to enjoy some beverages before Yuri escorted them to the gate. Inside the throne room, Jignif and the delegation meets Ainz for the first time, but Demirus was displeased by the way Jignif addresses Ainz, so he forced them to prostrate. Amazingly, Jignif was the only one to withstand the effect. Ainz then orders Demirus to release them and wanted to apologize for his behavior, but Jignif stopped him. Jignif then presented the head of the noble that sent the worker groups to Nazarick, and Ainz turns the head into a Death Knight. Following that, Ainz decides to absolve the Empire's behavior and allows them to leave, but before that, Jignif proposed on forming an alliance and helped Ainz to establish a new nation. He accepted, so Jignif left his secretary Lune Vermilion in Nazarick while Ainz offers to send Demirus in return. The Empire's delegation soon left and Jignif plans to form a grand alliance against Nazarick, and he realized that Fluder has betrayed the Empire. But back in Nazarick, apparently Demirus has already predicted what Jignif will be planning and explains everything to the other Floor Guardians. Albedo also assures them that everything is going according to Ainz's plan. Demirus then confirms all preparations are ready to form their nation, and the only thing left is to think of a worthy title for their master. Everyone gave their suggestions, but in the end, Ainz decided to go with the Sorcerer King, which was suggested by Cocytus. In the reactor's capital, they received news that the Empire has recognized and formed an alliance with the nation led by the Sorcerer King and demand the kingdom to hand over the fortress city of Irantau. Despite the warnings from Gazev, the king still ordered for the nobles to prepare for war and gather their forces at Irantau. 2 months later, all the leaders gathered at Irantau to discuss the battle plan, and Marquis Raven is appointed as the commander. Prince Barbaro was then ordered to lead the force to Kane village and gather information about Ainz. With the meeting concluded, the king later met with Raven to discuss the future plans of the kingdom. Afterwards, Gazev invites Brain and Climb to join him on top of the watchtower. Meanwhile, across the Katzeb plains in the Imperial Fort, Ainz and Mare are greeted by the Imperial Knight Nimber and General Carvain. Ainz also brought over hundreds of Death Knights to join the battle. Now going over to Kane village, Prince Barbaro arrives and he contemplates about using the villagers as leverage against Ainz. We also see Lupus Regina watching from above and reporting the situation back to Ainz. Barbaro then orders his men to burn one of the watchtowers, and seeing that, the villagers decided to fight against the kingdom. So Jugam and his forces were responsible for distracting Barbro's army at the front while Henry led the younger villagers to safety at the back. However, they are intercepted by Barbro's forces, and this forced Henry to use her final goblin horn to summon a goblin army of 5,000 strong that surprised both Lupus Regina and Ainz. With the arrival of the goblin army, Jugam and his forces were able to retreat while they handled Barbro's forces. Barbro's forces were soon defeated and they were ordered to retreat. Later, Barbro and his remaining forces were massacred by Lupus Regina and some red-capped goblins she borrowed from Ainz. With that, we now go to the Empire where Jignev receives a report that the annual war with the kingdom is about to begin. He then explains why he wanted Ainz to use his strongest spells to his subordinates. Now back to the battle in the Kazet Plains, Ainz finally exits the fort and prepares to unleash his super tier magic. After confirming there are no players present, he uses Aye Shoot Nigurev on the kingdom's army, instantly killing the 70,000 soldiers led by Marquis Borlock. However, the spell was not over as it later created 5 hideous tentacle monsters called the Dark Young, and he orders them to attack the army except for 4 specific individuals. The massacre begins on the soldiers. Marquis Raven managed to escape thanks to his adventurers, and the king was forced to retreat back to Irantal. Back over to Ainz, he demands the soldiers to applaud his supreme power as we see one of the Dark Youngs approaching. He left on the Dark Young and went to Gazev's location. Towards where Gazev is, Brain and Climb arrive to help him. Ainz soon arrives as well and he offers Gazev a chance to serve him, but the offer was rejected. Afterwards, Gazev challenges Ainz to a duel and declares that it is his duty as the head warrior despite the difference in power between them. With Climb and Brain as witnesses to the battle, Ainz accepts the condition for PvP with Gazev. But before they fought, Ainz requested to appraise his sword and reveals that the blade has the potential to harm or even kill him, but Gazev has not unlocked the weapon's true potential. With that, their battle started and Ainz immediately stops time. He then approaches Gazev and casted delay magic True Death on him. When time is resumed, Gazev is dead instantly, and out of respect for him, Ainz decides to stop his attack. Before he left, he also asked Brain and Climb to deliver a final message to the king: surrender Irantal within the next few days. Back in the city, we see the king and the nobles are still despairing over what happened and they decided to hand over the city to Ainz. Meanwhile, on top of the watchtower, Brain grieves over the death of Gazev and is later joined by Climb. Later, the king returns to the Riestas capital still grieving the loss of Gazev while Prince Zanek tries to comfort him. Now over to the Empire, we see that Jignev is in utter shock that Ainz managed to kill 70,000 in the initial attack, then another 100,000 and even killing the head warrior Gazev. Finally, we return back to Irantal. The city is completely silent as the army of the Sorcerer King marches through the streets. However, they stop when a kid throws a rock at one of the Death Knights. Seeing this as being disrespectful towards the Sorcerer King, Albedo prepares to kill him, but Pendra's actor disguised as the adventurer Momon steps in to protect them. As the both of them prepare to fight, Ainz arrives and has Albedo deliver an ultimatum to Momon: join the Sorcerer King or they will kill the inhabitants of the city as collateral. Momon was then forced to stand down and he agrees to join them. Of course, this was part of their plan. Later, Demiurge and Albedo discuss the subjugation of Irantal is going smoothly thanks to the existence of Momon, and Demiurge is impressed that Ainz had been thinking so far ahead with his Momon persona. It then ends with the both of them entering the Irantal throne room where the other floor guardians as well as the Pleiades are gathered, and Ainz declaring the formation of the Sorcerer Kingdom under ainz ooal. That pretty much covers most of the important things in Season 3, so as usual, here are some of my opinions regarding the season. Honestly, this is probably the season I enjoyed the most because the way they brought back elements from the previous seasons to connect the story. Like the first arc follows the village that Ainz saved back in Season 1 and how they are progressing. Then the second arc follows the actions of the Empire and how they are tied to Ainz's ultimate plan of world domination, and finally the way they utilize the Momon persona as well. I love how Overlord is now going full steam ahead with the story trajectory, and it doesn't look like they are planning to stop until they reach their end goal. Also, this season is structured similarly to Season 2, so there's less focus on Ainz again, but I think this season does it better because the things they covered actually impacts the overarching goal of the show instead of just being a throwaway story. But the only complaint I have is that Season 3 has increased the use of CGI, and yeah, it does not look good, but I already expected the animation quality isn't going to change for the better, so might as well just accept it. But despite the animation being on the weaker side, ultimately the series' heart and soul will always be the world and characters, so if you can look past that, Overlord is an amazing series to follow. I'm glad to have 3 seasons of such an amazing show, and I honestly can't wait for Season 4 to come out.
私はここにアインズールゴウン魔導国建国を宣言する
But anyways, that's it for this Season 3 recap, and all we have to do now is wait for Season 4 to come out. I hope you enjoyed my recap on the Overlord series, and if you want more Overlord content, feel free to leave a like or comment down below on what you would like to see me cover. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more content like this in the future. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe everyone.